Listen to Career Paths by Implement every Thursday.
You might learn something.
You might not.
Available on Apple Podcasts,
On Spreaker,
Spotify,
on Google,
and iHeartRadio. It's your life. Make it happen.
Did you get your powder?
I didn't. I forgot my daughter.
Did you get your?
So, are we on this?
you're good?
Okay. Well, welcome to Career Paths. I'm your host, Victor Boudreau. My guest today, coincidentally, is my brother, Jim Boudreau. He is an architect. You've been an architect for a couple of years?
25.
Jeez Louise.
This May.
Wow. So give us a little background, personal background on yourself, like family, age, anything else we might want to know about you as...
That's a loaded question. 54. I have married. I have 3 children. I currently reside in Moscow, Idaho, but I work in Moscow and Coeur d'Alene and Spokane and Tri-Cities.
So you're licensed
I'm
Idaho?
licensed in multiple states.
Okay.
That's something that you can get an architecture degree and not get licensed, and then you're not allowed to be an architect. You can't use the word architect in your job description. You can be a designer. You can be...
There's many facets to being an architect, designer, doing basically what you've done, obviously. We were just talking about that before the show, talking about things that are a part of what you do, or designer, architect, project manager.
There are a lot of sub-classifications underneath architecture.
Okay, so there's many things that someone can actually do besides just quote-unquote architecture or,
Yeah, and sitting around drawing pictures of buildings is certainly a part of it, but it's a pretty narrow part of what the whole picture is. So,
where were you? What were you doing when you decided to become a quote unquote architect? What did you?
Everything I've done has been pretty non-traditional. So I was trying to be a rock star.
Really?
And
interesting.
Imagine that. And wasn't succeeding very much at being a rock star. I mean, I was a rock star. I just was starving to death. So, and then I met my wife. I had a daughter, and it was time to get a real job.
Okay.
And I had grown up always thinking that I was going to be an architect because of Uncle Rusty.
Oh, yeah.
And
a relative that was a builder, architect, etc.
Well, he wasn't an architect. We always were told that he was an architect.
I was just told he was a builder.
I was told he was an architect. Okay. And he did some of his own designs.
Okay. And
so it's an easy mistake to make. But I always thought it was ironic that, the person that I grew up thinking was like the coolest architect in the world wasn't actually an architect.
Nice. So what challenges did you face when you first started looking into the career and going that way?
Just knowing that it takes a long time. At that point in time, you had to have a minimum of a 5-year degree and then 3 years of internship. And then you could start taking your licensing exams.
Oh. And
that takes up to another, I know people that have tried and failed for years. Nice.
Thank you.
I know people that have tried to get licensed and have not been able to pass their exams for lots of years. Like try and fail and try.
How long
and
did
fail.
it take you?
I passed my final exam in about 7 months after I started taking it. From start of school till there's a diversion in there, but I did not start taking my exam right after my internship. I waited because I was working in a non-architect role, didn't have to have my license, and so I was actually out of school 10 years when I started taking my exam, it took me about 7 months to.
But you were
pass.
doing design or
Well, I was
other-
doing project management.
There you go.
So
Still in the field of.
it's a related
Right.
field, yeah.
Okay. When you're looking to start and going into school, where'd you find the info? Because back then there was, being
Yeah.
old school, there wasn't Google, there wasn't the internet.
Couldn't look it up.
So where'd you go for your info, and what inspired you to keep going? Because obviously there's always hurdles along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are hurdles. So when I graduated high school, I went to school at Falls for one semester.
Spokane Falls Community College.
Spokane Falls Community College for one semester in pre-architecture. It was some of the general requirements that you had to take to,
Move forward.
to be in the architecture program. They didn't offer architectural degrees. That was U of I or WSU.
Right.
But back when I graduated, went to school for that one semester and started out. So I had been through all of the counselors' catalogs and magazines and all of their information about architecture. So back then I had an idea of what it took to become an architect. And then I took about 7 years off, playing music and
Right.
working
Miscellaneous.
anything and everything just to
bills.
eat.
Right.
And then, like I say, when I was about 24, 25, decided I was time to get real. Went to North Idaho College for 1 year because we were living in Coeur d'Alene at the time. Picked up more general ed requirements, and then transferred down to the U of I and spent the next 4 years. Back then it was a 5-year Bachelor of Architecture program, which would allow you to get licensed. It was a professional degree. They have since changed to a 4-year bachelor's degree with a 2-year master's degree, which gives you the same professional standing.
Huh. Wow.
But we were just so much smarter and better back then. We didn't need that extra year.
So what obstacles were in your way to start? What were your major obstacles?
You want to try that again?
Thank you. Go ahead.
Major obstacles would be, how do you support yourself when you're going to school
Right.
and you already have a child and you're married. Even though Diane worked throughout school, I still
Diane was
had
your
to
wife.
work. Diane, my wife. I'm sorry.
Helped you support.
She worked the full time that I was in school, but I still had to bring in money, still had
Sure,
to pay
sure.
bills and things. Other obstacles, honestly, that was probably the biggest thing.
Day to day and week to week, month to month, trying to get
Yeah,
by.
being a
School.
non-traditional student and having a family.
So would you advise not have a family before if you thought about going to school? You think
So that's a loaded question.
I'm not knocking, not to put down your family, wife, and kids and all, but would
No,
it have
no.
been a little bit easier not to have to support them while
So-
you're trying to go to school?
For me personally, if I didn't have a family,
Yes.
I would have no incentive to go to school.
So there you
So
go.
I would be still playing music and
Huh.
flipping burgers at Dick's.
Doing whatever you wanted to do.
Whatever it was. So once I had the obligation and the responsibility, then it was okay. That was the motivation. That was the incentive. Even though it tends to get in the way of. So I was there with a bunch of kids, a bunch of
younger.
19-year-old kids.
And you were 25, 26 at that time?
25, 26. I graduated when I was 30.
Okay.
Or right before I turned 30.
Right.
So I was one of the older people in the program.
Sure.
And we would go hang out, but we didn't. It wasn't Animal House.
Right.
It was like all of the other students would come to our apartment for study hours or to watch TV because we had cable and a couch. So
They're responsible.
So I don't know if that answered the question.
I
but
don't know
basically,
either, but what the heck?
if I didn't have the if I didn't have the wife and kids, I probably wouldn't have gone to school.
There you go. Well, that answers that question. So what misconceptions that you find being actual doing the architect design stuff as opposed to what you thought it was.
Sure.
When you always imagine something's going to be a certain way,
Yeah.
and then now you're doing it. It's like not even so.
Preconceived notions.
Thank you.
Architecture is this creative profession. It is creative, but it's creative in a very different way. Everybody thinks that architects are designers, and the reality is there's about 3% of all architects are really designers.
Right.
The rest of architects have to make buildings stand up and have to make sure that the snow stays out of the doorway, and that all of your plumbing lines up and that things work.
Right.
So that's one of the bigger lessons about it, is that yes, architecture is designing buildings, but again, that's a very, very small portion of what that career is about, or what the jobs are that fall underneath architecture.
Your misconception of that.
Yeah.
What was the hardest part and worst part about school? About going to school? We've already talked kind of financial, so we understand that.
Right.
So that's hard. But actual during the classes and stuff, what hardest and worst part per se?
I saw a cartoon recently, and it was a stick man on a bike, and he had flames coming off of him, and it said, "Architecture school is like riding a bike in hell, only the bike and you are on fire in hell." It's an ungodly amount of hours that you have to work. I went days without being able to sleep because I had a deadline that was coming up. That you have other classes that you have to do, and then you have your studio classes where you have projects, and those projects have deadlines. Every class has deadlines, but the amount of work that you have to do just to stay in the program, let alone be good in the program.
Did that prepare you for what you do now and what you've done? Because sometimes I know you work a lot, but
yeah, it sets a dangerous precedent, because I'm 54 years old and I pulled an all-nighter last month.
Right.
That's just stupid. People shouldn't work like that. But yeah, I mean, it's good training, because
sometimes you have
there are times where there's just too much work and not enough hours in the day.
That's true. What was the best part and funnest part of going to school, and what you learned, I guess?
Well, when you spend that much time, basically architecture students, for the most part, work in a studio, which is everybody's got a drafting table and their computer and whatnot at an assigned desk, not in a classroom, but in studio. Studio's just a great big open space where everybody goes and works.
Right.
And one of the coolest parts of architecture school for me is that I formed friendships and relationships with people, because I saw them way more than I saw my wife.
Right.
Way more than I saw anybody.
You're still connected with those?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, some great people, great friendships. You get stupid when you're up for 48 hours.
Really?
And
I've never done that.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
yeah. So,
I slept very little overtime.
Right. It's like playing music. I mean, you form
A bond.
friendships and connections and relationships, and yeah, those things just don't go away.
So about the job, what's the thing you hate about it, and what's the thing you love about it? What'd you say?
The thing I hate about
I guess I got to specify which job that is. Architecture, design. Which is your? So clarify.
Okay, so I spend a lot of my time drawing. It's computer drawing or
Is that
hand sketching.
drawing or drawing?
Drawings.
Thank you.
Would you like to see my drawings?
SNL reference.
So I spent a lot of time working on drawings on my computer, and I'll work. It's very common to work 10, 12 hours a day. And the thing that I hate is sitting for 10 or 12 hours a day. It drives me absolutely bonkers. I like to be up and going, and
Break it up, yeah.
yeah, and
Sit in one spot.
sometimes you just have to sit
I'm
and
there.
grind.
Right,
So that's probably the worst part of it.
right.
A close second is well, this is just whiny, but when
Oh, you're here to whine. Go ahead and whine. No one else is going to listen, so
why not?
we're probably once you get to this part, they're going to probably turn this off. They're tired of listening to you whine. But go ahead.
Probably. The worst part was finding out what architects make when they get out of school.
Uh-huh.
It's depressing.
Uh-huh.
You spend 5 years and tens of thousands of dollars getting this degree, and then you find out that you really don't know anything, and that's how much you get paid for, is how much you know.
Right. We have some information here on basic.
These are current numbers. Mine
Right,
was
right.
25 years ago. So
Yeah, we're looking at to start basically what we discussed, about 40 grand out of high school, out of college,
30 to 40 probably.
give or take, and
Yeah.
then maybe up to 80, 85. And that's current.
Well,
that's not what you made, right?
Yeah,
I
I mean,
don't
when
need
I
specifics,
started,
but
it was about half of that.
nice.
Um,
You're still paying on your student loans, are you? Okay, never mind on that. So what would be the best thing about
the best thing about architecture,
or
for
design?
me personally,
Yes.
my
Yeah.
most rewarding part of architecture is when I get to drive up to and go through a building that I built
Laid
or I
out.
worked on or I designed or I had a part in. Dad's 85th or 80th birthday party down at the Grand.
Yes.
I worked on that hotel,
That's
and
true,
it's
yeah.
very gratifying.
Right. That's part of you.
It feels good to actually know that you had a part in that.
And we're talking about the Davenport Grand Hotel downtown Spokane, Washington. Just so you know, you dealt with that. You did stuff on that design.
All of the interiors we were involved in the
Nice.
design and
Wow.
construction of.
So we were just talking about time in the office as opposed to time in the field. Obviously, you like the variety. Obviously, being in the office is part of the job, but getting out and about.
I like going out in the field.
Right.
I actually, before and during school, I worked construction
Okay.
with your brother
Yes.
and
I met him
others.
once. Yes, I met.
And I enjoy seeing things going together. I
Right.
mean, I like getting out and tromping around in the mud and hanging out with the guys that are actually building,
Right.
because
It's all part of it. Part of the team.
honestly, those people, they're the ones that are making stuff happen,
Right. No,
and I have a ton of respect for the guys that are out there building. So.
I agree. I've been there, done that one.
Except for your brother.
Yes, except for my brother. So money. What would you advise? What would you give to or advice to somebody looking to get into design, architecture. Project management, to realize that you're not going to start out rich?
Right.
But
Work in construction. I mean, if you're absolutely convinced that you want to be an architect, I think that you need to work your summers and maybe even take a gap year or two and work construction. Get out there and see how things go together.
really
Because
happen.
at the end of the day, we tell people how to put buildings together. There are a lot of us architects that have no clue
Right.
how things go together.
In my career, things I've done, I've seen that happen. Where you see,
Absolutely.
you see blueprints and layouts, and what they say on the blueprint doesn't even make sense.
Doesn't match up. It's funny because I when I worked construction before becoming an architect, can I swear? You would always hear people saying, "Goddamn architects, goddamn engineers, they don't know what they're doing. What a bunch of idiots."
Right.
And then I go into the field that that.
So you do try to make sure you don't make those same mistakes.
Try to.
Yeah.
Try to.
Be aware of
that. And if we all make mistakes, there's never a perfect set of drawings or perfect design, but
If you have good communication.
when you do make mistakes, or when when someone has a question, you got to be humble about it, and you've got to go and
Right.
talk to
Right.
give the person asking the question
Right.
the appropriate amount of respect, and say, "Hey, I don't know. If I screwed it up, let's figure it out."
Right. Fix it,
And
make it happen.
Life gets a lot easier if you go that way.
Anything else we need to know about that you wanted information-wise that you think? that somebody would maybe need to know if they wanted to get into design,
Getting into
design architect, project manager, etc.?
It's a great big field.
There's a lot of different venues, obviously.
There's a lot of different ways that you can
positions.
make a living if you've got an architecture degree or even an architecture license. You're not stuck with one career path. There's a lot of different ways that you can make money and make a living if that's where you're at.
Right. Nice. Nice. Any other questions? Got anything? Anything? Because we'll be editing this part out.
Not now.
Okay.
I did earlier, but
You can't.
got 'em.
Did it? Okay. Yeah, I tried to cover as much as we could. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
We may have Jim back because he's our subject to a
Guinea pig.
guinea pig. Thank you, and you guinea pigged very well today.
Thank
so, hopefully we'll have him back here in the future. Have different information, different questions as we move forward with career paths. Thank you very much, sir. You guys take care. We'll see you soon. Bye bye. What do you think?
I like it.
Good.